My name is Gary Dunham. I'm one of the co-founders of Green Team America. We are an environmental group that is uniting high school clubs, ecology groups all across the country. We're so fortunate today to have Dr. James Hansen with us. I'll ask him a few questions, make some comments, and we'll have a couple of our student members here to do the same thing. We thank Dr. Hansen, and I want to caution you to pay close attention. This may be the most important message that you ever hear. Jim, as you know, Green Team America is all about uniting high school environmental clubs and the students across the country, and with our primary purpose is to fight the effects of man-made climate change. I'm just wondering candidly if you could tell me what is your opinion of the concept, and what do you think our chances are of really making a difference?
Well, I think it's extremely important, because I think the only hope that we have is if young people begin to put pressure on the politicians. We've got to hold their feet to the fire, because what they're doing is setting these goals. They're saying, well, we'll reduce emissions 80% in 2050, something which is outside their period of office, and which you can show from the science you can't meet those goals if you continue to use coal and let the CO2 be emitted, and especially if you begin to develop the unconventional fossil fuels. But that's exactly what we're doing. We have to phase out the coal emissions, and we have to prohibit the use of unconventional fossil fuels, unless these processes actually capture the carbon dioxide and store it. But none of them are likely to ever do that. And you know, the thing is that the actions that are needed to solve this problem are actually achievable, and they have many other benefits. The problem is that there are special interests that benefit from business as usual, and they are very effective in Washington and the other capitals, because it turns out that money talks. We're supposed to have a democracy where it's one person, one vote, but in fact, it's often $1, one vote. That's the problem. The things that are needed, frankly, is to put a price on carbon emissions, but the money that is collected, which should be paid by the fossil fuel companies at the mine or the port of entry, should be then given to the public on a per capita basis, for example, or by reducing payroll taxes. That way, the public has the money to make the changes in their lifestyle, to buy a more efficient vehicle or insulate their home. Then we can solve the problem that way. But instead, what Congress is doing, they set a nominal cap, but then they have offsets, so you don't really reduce the emissions. And furthermore, how do they use the money that they collect from selling the emission rights for the cap? They decide which favorite guys they're going to give the money to. They're spending billions on this mythology called clean coal. There is no such thing as clean coal. It's very dirty stuff. It's got mercury and arsenic, and the mining process is polluting the environment. So, you know, we have to make the politicians be honest. And I think young people are in a position, because they're the ones who are going to inherit the planet. They have a moral position where they can put pressure on politicians, and they need to do that.
You know, everybody in the environmental field, we've all at one time or another had somebody get up in our face and want to debate the issue of whether global warming is real or not, or whether it's imminent or not. It's a little embarrassing if they take you by surprise. With your stature and your background, I'm just wondering, what do you do when somebody like Senator Imhoff questions the validity of global warming? What do you say?
Well, you know, it's very McCarthy-like tactics that they have. They simply say something, which would usually be nonsense, but they think that if they just keep saying it often enough, that it becomes the truth. It's like the Nazis, their information agency. When you say something often enough, the public begins to think that it's the truth. And it's not easy. You know, that's, again, the democratic process should work, but we've got to expose people like Inhofe when they're, you know, saying things which just don't make scientific sense.
You know, I think everybody in America has been pretty disappointed with the aftermath of Kyoto. And of course, in a very short time, Copenhagen will take place, and we're all wondering what's going to come out of that. Again, if I could ask you to be very candid, Jim, what do you think is really going to happen on the environmental scene within the next decade?
Well, what I'm afraid of is that we will have in Copenhagen a agreement which is analogous to the one that was achieved in Kyoto. And if you make a graph, this is one of the things that scientists can do to help illuminate the situation. Just make a graph of what happened to the emissions after Kyoto. They actually were going along increasing, they started to increase more rapidly. Because as long as fossil fuels are the cheapest energy, you're going to keep burning them. And it was a cap-and-trade system, which had a little bit of effect on some developed countries' emissions, but not very much, because they used offsets, so they could actually continue to increase their emissions and then pretend they were investing someplace else in the world to reduce the emissions in China. In fact, the emissions in China exploded. The same thing is going to happen in Copenhagen if it follows this cap-and-trade and offsets. And there's a great danger that will happen, because there's a benefit for both the developed countries and the developing countries to make that sort of a deal. It's analogous to the indulgences of the Middle Ages, when the Catholic Church would sell forgivenesses for sins. The sinners get benefit because they can still go to heaven. The bishops benefit because they collect a lot of moolah. That's what's happening in Copenhagen. The developed countries want to continue to eat business as usual, so they will provide some money for adaptation or for offsets. They will set up offsets, giving money to some country to preserve a forest. But the demand for wood and the demand for land to grow food is not going to go away. So if you preserve one forest, some other tree is cut down to provide the wood. So you're not really doing anything useful, but the two parties are both gaining something. That's the great danger.